What's going on, guys? In this video we're going to talk about Microstrategy news. Yes, they bought some more Bitcoin. And while it's not necessarily getting a positive reaction today, we also have to realize the whole market is basically red. A great chance to load up on your favorite stocks. Microstrategy bought another 2,138 Bitcoin, which marks their 8th consecutive week of buying Bitcoin. And you might remember their last Bitcoin buy didn't receive the best reception. We had a bearish Peter Schiff. I think he's just jealous of MicroStrategy's returns. But will the market keep rallying on news of Bitcoin purchases for MicroStrategy? There will be times that it doesn't, obviously. When Bitcoin's in a downtrend, of course Wall Street isn't going to be as excited. And Bitcoin as of late has been in a bit of a downtrend. MicroStrategy's holdings are now 446,400 Bitcoin. They are on their way to 500,000. And in my opinion, they're easily going to achieve that in 2025. Probably Q1 of 2025. And they have $6.8 billion left for their ATM. And this is very interesting. On MicroStrategy's chart, we're approaching the gap fill that I was talking about up in the high 280s, 290 area. But we also just gapped down here. So we now have gaps basically in either direction to fill. I do think we're going to fill this gap, but take advantage when it gets there. I don't think MicroStrategy is going much lower. And here's something that's also very interesting, and I think it's more than just a coincidence. You can see on the Fibonacci retracement tool on our run here, this retracement, we are approaching the 618, and this is right where that gap fill is. If MicroStrategy can come down, find support at the 618, and then start popping further, we will have filled our gap. We will have done a nice retracement on the Fibonacci, and I do believe this is what MicroStrategy could need to go higher. Keep in mind, right now we are in a downtrend. We need to crack this descending resistance. Once we do that, I think we will get a reaction. So I think MicroStrategy isn't out of the woods yet. I do think we need to fill our gap to the downside, although there is a chance it doesn't get filled until next cycle bear market, which I sort of doubt just because we're so close to it now. We might as well fill it. We need to break this descending resistance. And let me show you guys something else. That gap that I was talking about to the upside, this is basically a reaction on the break of our ascending support. You'll see that this support level MicroStrategy was utilizing. You did see pretty clear reaction, a gap down pre-market, and now we're starting to sell off here. Typically, a break of a support like this will bring more pain. We'll see where MicroStrategy bottoms out. I do think it's a buying opportunity right now. If you were asking me about MicroStrategy back when it was $500, $400, are you as bullish on it now? Are you thinking about getting in now? Or now are you scared? This is the time to buy, not when it's $400 or $500. And hell, the best time to buy was earlier in the cycle, but I digress. Now, we also have a prediction I want to talk about. K33 Research says that Bitcoin might top out on the short term in January. And this prediction is based on historical data showing a 318-day cycle for crypto. And K33 does state that in this next peak, it would be a nice area to reduce some risk, realize some profits for the short term. In a recent post on their website, K33 outlined that on average, there's about 318 days between the first peak in a crypto cycle and its last. This cycle's initial peak occurred on March 5, indicating that the final one in this current cycle may occur on January 17th. And that date would fall in line with the start of Trump's January 20 inauguration. Might be a bit of a buy the rumor, sell the news, which is definitely a possibility if we start running up to that event. It's highly likely that the market has delusional expectations for the pace of policy changes and will overprice the impact running into the inauguration. We expect the current rally to peak in mid-January before the inauguration. View that area as a natural area to reduce risk, realize profits for the short term. What do you guys think? If we rally up to that date, I do agree with this statement. If we don't run up to that event, I disagree, obviously. Based on past cycle peaks, Bitcoin could land around $146,000, but based on growth projected by Bitcoin's rising market cap, it could instead reach 212,500. I don't know where they came to these numbers, but okay. Also, another technical trader familiar with Bitcoin cycles told that there will be pullbacks to follow, and that corrections could start between late January and February, ranging between a 15 and 30% correction. But separate research suggested an incoming peak next year. On a different time frame, however. According to this firm CC Data, Bitcoin typically peaks 371 to 546 days after its most recent halving event, which occurred in April. This estimate provides two scenarios, a base case where Bitcoin's expected to peak at the start of Q2, and a bull case projecting the asset's highest price in November, which does line up with past cycles a little better. And under this base case scenario, Bitcoin could reach 155,000. If the bull case occurs instead, 195. I think between 150 to 200,000 is where we'll land on this cycle. If things go a little worse than expected, maybe like 130s, to me there is no possibility in my mind that Bitcoin has topped out yet. This would break this 4-year cycle. This would also diverge from M2 global expansion which Bitcoin is known to trade along with 85% of the time or so. Halvings are becoming less material in their relative impact. Bitcoin adoption is happening at an institutional level. Bubbles and drawdowns are due to remain a common feature, but they emerge from new developments. Were these companies piling into Bitcoin during the bear market? No, they're piling in now while Bitcoin's going up. When we approach the next bear market, are these companies going to pile in? Maybe, maybe not. But to think that Bitcoin isn't going to follow some sort of cycle because it's so based on supply and demand, because there's a mechanic in it that cuts incoming supply in half every 4 years, there is going to be a positive reaction around that time. And because there's always going to be a positive reaction around that time, there will always be a bear market in between those times, in my opinion. You can't have the good without the bad. Now let's look at Bitcoin, guys. Remember that 50 MA? We did get a candle to close under it, and now we're starting to sell off a bit. Now it's important that we hold this $92,000 area. One thing that's interesting is you'll see on the 4 hour at least, the price is still at somewhat of a decline. We're seeing lower lows and the RSI is starting to pick up. Take advantage while Bitcoin is down. You want to be buying it while it's low, not buying it while it's high. Or just DCA and ignore the noise and not rack your brain on the day-to-day moves. Follow the cycle, you'll do fine. There's a possibility if we break this $92,000 area, we come and test our ascending support. I think there will be a reaction on this area. And this is the clear direction we've been going. Bitcoin has been going in this upward right slope. If we break this, we change our direction, essentially. We change this trend. I do think this support level will hold up. And also going back to the daily, I want to show you guys the 200 MA is slightly over 70,000. I think at some point later in the cycle, we could test the 200 MA. I personally find it unlikely that we're going to test it anytime soon. And it could be down the road when the 200 MA is much higher in price and we have a correction in mid-2025, for example. But if we do somehow correct to 70,000 at any point in this cycle, or just come to the 200 MA later on when it's like 90,000 or 100,000, take advantage. I think there's a good possibility we don't see lower than $70,000 ever again for Bitcoin. Call me crazy, but let's look at what happened in previous cycles. Bitcoin was in this long phase underneath its all-time high, right? Once it broke its all-time high, which our all-time high was 74,000 until we finally broke out and rallied. That was that definitive rally point, just like we've seen in past cycles, where we finally break from our previous all-time high and then we start going parabolic and end the following year strong, which for us will be 2025. But look at what happens every time. We come back in our bear market and we don't even come back to those levels. Those previous all-time highs, they basically become a support. So I do think these what was our previous all-time high before we broke out to new all-time highs, which Bitcoin does this every cycle, although it did it earlier this time around. I do think we aren't going to see under a $70,000 Bitcoin. Let me show you the cycle prior. This is back in 2017 top. We saw this long consolidation until we finally broke and ran. We never saw those prices again. We saw a low of $3,000 in 2018, basically the crypto winter of that time. And Bitcoin never came down to revisit those peaks in the 2000 area. I do personally think that this cycle, $70,000 area, is that zone that we don't go under, that zone that we use as support in the next crypto winter. Say we top out at 150, 200,000. Is it unreasonable to think that Bitcoin can lose 50% or so, 60% or so, and head towards $70,000? It's suffered much larger drops than that in previous cycles. And you could argue that now with Wall Street in, we might see less severe drops, and I tend to agree with that. But to think potentially, Bitcoin won't drop maybe a 50%. A 50% drop from 150,000 brings us right to $70,000 or so. Maybe we top out at 180,000 and we have like a 60% correction. But to me, there will be a major correction much down the road when Bitcoin's much higher in price. So don't be scared of that. Just follow the cycle. Know that things will come to an end. There will be pullbacks. There will be corrections. There will be opportunities to really pile in again. I think for now, Bitcoin's just a solid DCA, knowing that the cycle will top out later in 2025. Follow the cycle and you'll do all right. There were times that people thought that this 74,000 was the top. They might have gotten out here at the lows at 49,000 and gave up. And then Bitcoin went to double. Or maybe they're here in 2023 when Bitcoin was just stuck under 30,000 until it finally broke out and rallied to 74,000. Be patient, follow the cycle, and you'll do all right. We still got some bull run to go. But how are you guys doing on a day like this, a very red day? Are you taking advantage? Or did you wake up this morning and want to go right back to bed? But thanks as always, guys, for watching. Hopefully you have a happy new year, and I'll see you guys on New Year's Eve tomorrow.